Armchair Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know, we've all got that one friend, haven't we? That one who finds all the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach. Well, now you can be that friend because Smart Travel is like him or her, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like how to get real value from points, not just a tiny little reward at the end of checkout, or which flight deals are actually deals and not just clickbait, or when that convenient travel bundle might actually be a hidden tax in disguise, all that stuff. So travel smarter and spend less with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts.
As we're flying up the Baltoro and then onto the Godwin-Austen Glacier in this massive Pakistani Army helicopter, and I'm looking up, we fly past this place called Concordia, and I look sort of out the window towards K2, and it's this splitter blue day with this little wisp of white snow coming off the top of the second highest mountain in the world, and I'm just like, oh my God, you know, it's so beautiful, but it's so huge. And I'm feeling this sense of terror and this realization of, oh shit, like what have I agreed to?
Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host, and I'm really excited to tell you about our guest today. Cory Richards is one of the world's most renowned adventure photographers and mountaineers. He's climbed Everest without oxygen. He was in the first team to summit an 8,000 meter peak in winter. He's been on the front cover of National Geographic, and he's just a really great guy to hang out with him. I love chatting with him, and I think you're really going to love hanging out with him too. Are you ready? Let's go. This episode is called The Color of Everything because that is the title of Cory's new book, the subtitle of which is A Journey to Quiet the Chaos Within. It's packed full of adventure, but it's also an incredibly honest memoir about his life and his struggles with mental health. Climbing for him became a way to escape the madness that was chasing him, as he puts it. And let's be honest, we all have a little bit of that in varying degrees, don't we? We all have our demons and our struggles. So I really hope that this episode takes you to the edge of your seat, but I also hope it offers some insight into that side of things too. And I have to say, it did for me. I don't talk about this very much, but mental health is something that I've struggled with on and off through my life, and I really believe that talking about it is important. It can make a difference. There is no stigma to it. There's no weakness. And the more we say that, the easier for all of us it becomes. So if you're going through anything and after listening to this are inspired to take some steps, then I've put some links in the show notes that might help. Before we get going, just really quickly, I also want to say, if you're enjoying the show, please remember to subscribe and follow us on your favorite platform. If you don't, the algorithm might forget about us, which would be very sad. And remember, following the show is almost definitely guaranteed to bring you good travel karma. Speaking of which, as Cory quotes at the top of one of his chapters, this is taken from the book Where the Wild Things Are, "Let the wild rumpus start." Cory grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. He was smart. He went to high school 2 years early. He was creative. He questioned things. His dad took him and his brother into the mountains and taught them to climb. It was an enchanted moment, he says, but it wouldn't last.
Growing up climbing, growing up skiing, growing up outdoors was a very beautiful spell. And then right around the early adolescence, there started to be this growing seeming resentment in some ways, specifically from my brother towards me. And then I think my best guess is that because of sort of early childhood dynamics and potentially some complications from postpartum depressions, my brother's emotional needs were not being met. And therefore, he found ways to get those needs met, which is just totally natural. And one of the best ways and most effective ways between siblings is to fight with your siblings, right? And it would be really easy for me to stop there and be like, see, poor me. But what's more complicated about that is that I learned that I got attention through that too. And as that perpetuated and proliferated into adolescence, as both of us grew into bigger, stronger bodies, that became less squabbling and more pronounced violence, like real violence.
It's May now, and every night ends the same, he writes. A fight erupts in the kitchen or in the driveway or on the lawn. The stress is palpable and tastes like burnt coffee with the same nauseating jitters, sweat, and anxiety. The violence and chaos build with every blow until eventually one punch is thrown that extinguishes the light of childhood and changes our family forever. Cory describes himself growing up, even in those enchanted years, as having something different about him, mercurial, emotionally volatile, like he was on the outside looking in to the point where it was almost like he was becoming invisible. By 8th grade, about 14 years old, as the violence at home had intensified, he was on Prozac, he was depressed, insomniac, skipping school, doing drugs and drinking. And then one day, it all came to a head. And sitting alone in the darkness of the family den, everything collapsed.
Take the most jarring emotional experience that you've had where you are so confused in the moment, and everything seems to be moving too fast. And so you can't make sense of it, and yet everything is really crisp and sharp. And now amplify that by 1,000. That's what it feels like to me inside my head when these things are happening. It's both incredibly crystal clear and yet moving so quickly that it's hard to keep track of. So it's almost like a blending of senses where sound, perception, and even somatic sensory feelings, like the word sharp, sort of start to overlap to the point of overwhelm, at which point there seems to be a breaking.
He writes, "The noise in my head and the silence surrounding me warps, bends, and drones as my hands cover my ears and I pull at my hair. Like waking up, the horrifying reality of madness appears to me slowly and all at once, and I wish to die because all I want is for the noise to stop." He calls this his rite of passage into the world of bipolar disorder, which is characterized, according to the National Institute for Mental Health, as a mental illness that causes unusual shifts in a person's mood, energy, activity levels, and concentration. But that's underplaying it in some ways. Being bipolar is like being on the worst kind of emotional roller coaster with no ability to get off. There are extreme highs or manic or hypomanic episodes in which people can often experience feelings of elation and invincibility, but also act impulsively and dangerously. And there are extreme lows too, which come with deep depression and feelings of worthlessness and worse. And then there's mixed episodes when you experience both at the same time. And that's what Cory was going through. "I'm initiated," he says. "Madness lives in me."
Finally, I land in this hospital at the psychiatric unit at the University of Utah. And when I'm there, they suggest this treatment facility called Lifeline. I get put in this white van, taken from one psychiatric ward to this new sort of place in the middle of northern Salt Lake. It's the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. There's like some oil refineries a couple miles down the road. And there's just like flat wasteland. There's a gun club nearby. And it's just like, holy shit, what is this place? And it's this one-story building. It must have been converted from some office space. I don't know what. And you just walk in and you just smell like teenage hormones and pain. And there's like the front desk and there's like the shitty lollipops and like somehow a lollipop is supposed to make you feel better. And they take my shoes, they take my belt. And then all of a sudden, somebody who's been there for a longer period of time, I'm on first phase, when you come in. And then somebody who's on second phase or higher, when you first come in, they walk you around and they have like 3 fingers down the back of your pants and then their forefinger and their thumb through your belt loop so you can't run. And the reason they take your shoes is so you don't have your shoelaces to hang yourself like your belt to, and without your shoes, you can't run away. So, and then it's group therapy for 8 hours a day based primarily on the 12 steps. And we dive into sort of this, let's fix you narrative.
He stayed for 2 months, group therapy, analysis, scratching his forearms and wrists until they bleed because he craved the sting, he says. He ran away 3 times, the first for more than a week, crashing in attics and basements, and then in parks and alleys. The second, using the head of a nail as a screwdriver to unlock a second-story window and running into the night with only his boxers and a blanket. And then finally, after his parents eventually conceded defeat, he simply walked out the front door. But he didn't come home. In those enchanted years of his childhood, he said that nature was the only reprieve he got from his hyperactive brain. And so it was to nature that he returned.
I think what I was seeking was a place to belong. I felt very much like in my adolescence, I didn't really belong anywhere. And certainly nature and climbing and skiing, they gave me a place to belong and they gave me a place to anchor. I was searching for anything to hold on to that would anchor me. And climbing was just another expression of that. And it was something I knew from childhood. And so, I started climbing in the Cascades and then I started sort of anchoring my identity to it. And it gave me a sense of peace. And it also started to build a sense of community to which I could belong.
He writes that climbing has a way of making life feel lighter by amplifying the risks of gravity. And that lighter life was exactly what he'd been seeking. He climbed Navajo Sandstone in Zion National Park. He reached the summit of Denali in Alaska, feeling small on the way up, he says, and enormous on the way down. It had been years now since he'd had another bipolar episode. Nature was working, but it demanded a price, because in order for that lightness to hold, he had to continue to amplify gravity's risks.
Risk can come in a number of different forms. It doesn't have to be climbing. It can be, risky sex. It can be drugs. There's all sorts of risk. So the risk in this case was both maladaptive, but became like a beautiful coping mechanism in and of itself. Because there was a certain level of risk that I was tolerant of, I could use that in the form of climbing to then escape the chaos of my mind, but also live in the chaos because that's what I knew best. Live in the chaos of sort of managing risk and going and doing these high risk things and hijack presence, which climbing also does. It's all things happening at once. And there was this decision, I think very subconsciously, that like, oh shit, well, one of the ways that I can sort of save my life from this inevitable crazy that's going to come for me at some point, because that was another narrative that I learned. I'm crazy and madness is haunting me. I was like, well, I'm really good at risking my life or going into these risky environments. And that seems to keep me at a distance from going crazy. So I'm going to risk my life in order to save it.
I have a sense that the further I'm willing to go and the more I'm willing to risk, the less likely I am to sleep in the alleys and scream at trees. He kayaked with crocodiles in Australia. He took a 75-foot fall in the Canadian Rockies. He put up first ascents and his star grew because during all this time, his other love affair, photography, was beginning to bloom. Risk sells, he says, and the more he risked, the more successful he became. His heroes became his partners, they to brave bold new routes, he to follow them and get their pictures in magazines. Many of his friends would die, but he would push on to bigger mountains and higher risks, driven by ambition, love, and the madness he was running from. It wouldn't be until years later, when he saw death close up that he began to realize the stakes of the game he was playing. Before we get to the sponsors of the show, and thank you very much to you lovely people, by the way, I want to do a quick shout out for Cory's book, The Color of Everything, A Journey to Quiet the Chaos Within. It is exquisitely written, and I don't say that lightly as a writer myself. It's also a page turner. I was completely hooked. It's filled with incredible adventure stories, loads more than we could get in today too. And it's just really honest and vulnerable. And because of that, I find it incredibly inspiring too. So if you're looking for a good book, I can't recommend this highly enough. And it would make a great Christmas present too. Spoiler alert, family and friends, it's on my guest list for sure. I'm going to link to the book in the show notes. It's called The Color of Everything, A Journey to Quiet the Chaos Within. Go and check it out.
I was really trying to develop as a climber. And it was very ambitious at the time, where I find this body on a mountain called Artesanrahu. I am soloing alone at night. I start up the bottom of the face and I see a dot of color. I continue to climb. I'm radioing to my friends in base camp back down in the Santa Cruz Valley. And I come up on this sort of heap of nylon, and I thought it was just a tent or something. And I sort of pull it back from the ice, and I realize this is a very decomposed human body. It deals with so much, and it's a confrontation with my own deficits in understanding, or maybe my own avoidance around the reality of what high-end climbing can and often does lead to. But it's a funny chapter too, because I call out Andre Agassi because I like to add humor to this stuff too. It's not all serious and dark, but you know, I reread Andre Agassi's Open when I was writing the book, and I love that book. But one of the things he says is tennis is the loneliest sport. And here I am on the middle, in the middle of a Peruvian night, moonless night. I'm with a dead guy on the side of this mountain that's, like I've got my crampons that are dug in just millimeters into the ice. And I'm thinking, man, tennis is not the fucking loneliest sport.
Over the course of the next 3 years, Cory would go to the Himalaya 12 times. He would get his first commission from National Geographic and go on to become one of their most celebrated photographers of the time. His images evolved. He found his voice. A small person climbs above an impossible landscape in a red jacket dwarfed by glaciers that bend and wind and crack. Now I'm above the clouds and the world is glowing pink. Now a tent is perched on a ledge that falls away into nothing. But alongside those big, epic photographs were the quieter ones that revealed hidden moments, and darker ones too. The shadows made by all the bright lights of my growing success, he calls them. A nameless lover in a hotel room, a stripper's fake eyelashes on a windowsill next to an empty bottle. These, more than any others, he says, are what draw him the most. It had been 8 years since his first image was published. He was 29, his star was rising, and then he got a call. It was perhaps the biggest opportunity of his life, but it was also the most dangerous.
Gasherbrum 2 is the world's 13th highest mountain, so it's one of the 14 8,000 meter peaks in the world. There are only 14 in the world that stand above 8,000 meters. 8 of them are on the border of Nepal and Tibet. One of them is in India, and then 5 of them are in Pakistan. So to this point in 2010-11, all of the further south 8,000ers had been climbed in winter, and none of the Pakistani 8,000 meter peaks had been climbed in winter. And over, I think, 26 years, 16 expeditions had tried and failed. And so in winter of 2010-11, Simone Moro and Dennis Arupko invited me to come, really as a photographer. There was no expectation that I was going to go to the summit. And I didn't know if I was going to go to the summit. And I certainly didn't know all of this about winter 8,000 meter climbing. I was just asked by 2 guys who I admired if I wanted to go on a big expedition. I was like, fuck yeah. But I really had no understanding of what I was getting into. And as we're flying up the Baltoro and then onto the Godwin-Austen Glacier in this massive Pakistani Army helicopter, and I'm looking up, we fly past this place called Concordia, and I look sort of out the window towards K2, and it's this splitter blue day with this little wisp of white snow coming off the top of the second highest mountain in the world. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful, but it's so huge. And I'm feeling this sense of terror and this realization of, oh shit, like what have I agreed to?
They quickly fell into a routine. Climb high, sleep low. Climb higher, sleep higher. Go back to base camp, rest, repeat, acclimatizing to the extreme altitude and slowly adapting to the mountain. The fear never left him, though. Every motion is an act of defiance against my better sense, he says. And then finally, after about 4 weeks, they got the green light. The forecast was marginal but promising. It was time to go. The first day, he writes, on that final ascent was all storm, wind, and white, interrupted by dots of color snaking our way up the icefall and listening to avalanches we can't see. The next, a storm was brewing. The mountains behind us looked like rows of teeth, layer upon layer of sharp summits like the mouth of a shark. And then on the final day of the ascent, they wake up just after midnight and begin to climb.
When I close my eyes and I put myself there now, there is something so big about it that it makes everything feel immediate. There's something so threatening about it, and yet it's very benevolent, or seemingly benevolent, right up until the moment that it's not, even though there's all this potential energy in the risk and the potential of dying or getting really hurt, that it can do two things. It can bring you into a complete oneness with it, or it can bring you into a complete separateness. But to make it more simple, it's quiet. When it's quiet, it is shockingly immediate in a sensory sense. The smells are stronger. The sounds are louder, especially at altitude. The tastes are more pungent. The feelings, the cold, it's profound. And yet somehow the body and the mind adapts to it and interprets it in a way that it almost becomes normal. And in that way, it becomes comforting and it feels like home. But there's also the realization that we're only halfway, and the vast majority of accidents happen on the descent because you're tired at that point. And at least in this case, the mountain was getting enveloped by a winter storm in the Karakoram Himalaya. And these, generally speaking, winter storms in the Karakoram don't go well for climbers. And it started just laying down snow. And so leaving the summit, we were like, well, let's get out of here as fast as we can, and hoping that we were going to descend really far. And we barely made it back to our high camp. I mean, right at dark did we make it back. The wind was 100 kilometers an hour, and I'm just laying in the tent. Having done this incredible thing, all I'm thinking about is the tent getting lifted up by wind and rolled down the side, It's horrifying.
By the time they make it down to Camp 1 the next day, however, they are swelled up on success and survival and feeling good. Simone breaks trail through a meter of fresh snow for the final descent to base camp. Spirits are high. And then, he writes, a piece of ice falls, or one too many crystals land, or the wind blows just wrong and I hear it before I see it. It sounds like thunder and a freight train and wind all at once. I try to run, but the snow is waist deep and too heavy. I take 3 steps before the air blast lifts my body and I'm weightless.
It's funny. I just remember the fear beforehand, and then I remember being really angry in the avalanche because it was like, God damn it. It was like, I really don't, I'm pissed off. Like I don't want to die. And this seems silly. And there's the spiritual impact, which would be this is happening and life is over. And so that there's the questioning of what comes, what happens. Is this it, or is there something else? Certainly there's that going on. And then immediately when we stopped and I realized I was on the surface for the most part, or my head was out, then the fear comes back. And then I was overwhelmed by fear because somewhat irrationally, I was like, well, can I dig myself out? Because obviously my partners are dead, which they weren't, but can I dig myself out in time to not get buried by another avalanche?
My senses expand and blend into a single encompassing sensation. This is dying. I hear the snow in my mouth and taste blue and smell frozen as everything becomes something different altogether before crashing back into a life unfinished. The fragments get sucked from my brain into a black hole, a singularity. I'm not ready to die. I summon all the force I have left and thrust my hand and head and life towards what I hope is the sky. When he broke free, digging and thrashing and whimpering and crying, the first thing he did after checking his companions were okay was grab his camera, turn it around, and take a picture of himself, kneeling on the snow on the edge of death, as he puts it, shattering into 1,000 pieces. That image would end up on the front cover of National Geographic's 125th anniversary issue and change his life forever, for good and bad.
I don't think everything changes in a moment. I think one moment crystallizes all the moments of change that came before them. Yes, this was a profound moment. It was a profound catalyst. Climbing and the stimulation, and certainly the notoriety too, that came with the success of this, and then starting to work for National Geographic, and then being on the cover of National Geographic, and speaking and doing all the shit. All that attention was sort of like a great way to calm or to try to escape that cyclical pattern, that cycle in my head and so that started to inform all of my behaviors. In some ways, it's very much like a drug addiction where you need more and more and more just to get to baseline, right? And so there was a sense of more and more and more stimulation just to feel normal. And then the stimulation basically becomes your life. And then when you're not stimulated, the quiet that you're forced to sit with in those moments is so overwhelming and so uncomfortable and almost intolerable. I started to search for other ways to calm that noise. And that was, sex and alcohol, and also anything to provide either a sense of numbing or a sense of stimulation. And again, high risk behavior as a way to escape the chaos that's taking place inside. But when you're overdosing on everything in life, well, eventually, there's only one place that leads.
There are many other adventures, many other close calls, panic attacks, PTSD, breakdowns on the roof of the world. There is love, loss, tragedy, sadness, and triumph. But where this all leads for Cory in the end is back to where he started.
In 2019, Esteban Mena and I tried to do a new route on the northeast face of Everest in alpine style without oxygen. And we failed. We spent a very, very cold open bivvy one night at about 25,000 feet, just below 25,000 feet or something like that. And then COVID struck the world. Everest season got canceled, so we couldn't go back in 2020. And we decided, well, we'll go back in 2021. Again, Everest season got canceled. And so we decided to sort of do a dry run on a mountain called Dhaulagiri, which is the 7th highest mountain in the world. And I ended up having a very pronounced bipolar episode at base camp and making the radical and seemingly manic or hypomanic decision to walk away from climbing and photography completely.
I hug my legs to my chest, he writes, and bounce my jaw on my knees, rocking back and forth and holding my head. I start screaming as loud as I can into my sleeping bag, trying to muffle what's unfolding inside of me, clutching my chest as my heart beats, and I'm too alive, too keenly aware of everything. I know, feel, and understand that no piece of this life works for me anymore.
Here we are in the middle of Nepal. And I'm saying, I'm having this moment where I'm like, I'm going to move to LA. I'm done with climbing and photography. And here's my team around me. And I'm weeping while I'm saying this. And this is after spending a day in my tent alone, having a true mental breakdown. Everybody's looking at me like, what the fuck is going on? And yet, I believe, the way I understand this, the story I tell about it is that there was truth to what I was voicing. So there was something in me that knew that things had to change. Living at that speed for 20 years finally caught up with me. And there was an inner knowing that, hey, something has to change. Because I did. I changed radically. And that was as a result of sort of the surrender to, I fucking can't do this anymore. I'm too tired. It's like all the things that I thought made me whole out of this have started to keep me trapped. All the things that made me free now feel like a cage. All the world that I've been trying to see through photography, I've missed. All the freedom that I thought I was getting from climbing has now become an identity that feels like a cage, because these words, photographer, climber, they are things that if my identity is chained to them, well, what happens when I stop doing those things? Who am I? That starts to drive at the power of storytelling and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and how they can start to hold us in places that no longer serve us.
According to a Stanford University study, we have on average 60,000 thoughts a day, 90% of which are repeating in a cycle each day and from previous days and weeks and months and years. And most of them are negative, and many are just imagined hypotheticals of what might be that often never come to pass. And that's the thing Cory was beginning to realize. Our thoughts aren't real, they're just thoughts. What's real is the stories they reinforce about who we are. There's a Chinese proverb: be careful of your thoughts, for your thoughts become your words. Be careful of your words, for your words become your actions. Be careful of your actions, for your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits, for your habits become your character. And be careful of your character, for your character becomes your destiny.
I think potentially what we mean by healing is acceptance. Things just are. And once I started to let go of those narratives, the potency of them wore off. The human mind loves binary thinking. In order to survive, we do what's called splitting. And splitting is where we create a binary in which we are trying to order chaos. And that is a mechanism of trying to feel safe and by virtue of that survive in a chaotic world. So we identify with this or that, us or them. And so in trying to make ourselves safe, we predispose ourselves to conflict, because if it's us, then there's necessarily a them. And this is the sticky stuff about stories, personal stories, and identities of broken, specifically when it comes to mental health. There's this idea that you're sick, and so on the opposite of sick is well. So you spend your whole life trying to be well. Fucking bullshit. First and foremost, you are complete. Always at every moment. You're here. You're breathing. You're complete. There is nothing that you can do that will make you more complete.
I chose to live madly, he writes, to outrun madness itself. But it turned out that was just another story he was told and telling himself 60,000 times a day. Of all the things we can't choose, he says, our personal story is one we can. And that's because we are not one thing. We are the color of everything.
I was sitting there and I was looking at the ocean, and there was no separation between the sky. It was this very gray day. And so I can't tell if the clouds are reflecting the ocean or the ocean is reflecting the clouds, but there's no horizon, and it's just this seamless gray. And it's like this, where does one thing end and where does another begin? And is there black and white in the world at all? Or is all of life an expression of some shade of gray? This is a story about all the big colors of life, but also that there is no black and white. Nothing is broken, because if it's not broken, you don't necessarily need to heal. You just get to evolve. Gray is the color of everything that happens in life, which allows us to simply be. And by that, I mean just I am. It's the acceptance of the journey where we reacquaint ourselves with our wholeness.
The book ends with him starting to write the book. And that's because this isn't a story about reaching the end of a journey. There is no mountain here to conquer. It's a story about realizing he no longer has to run. Thank you, Cory. It's been an absolute honor to have you on the show. If you enjoyed the episode, the book is called The Color of Everything, A Journey to Quiet the Chaos Within. I loved it. There's so much more in this book than we could cover today. It is beautifully written, and I think you're going to love it too. So that's about all we have time for. Connect with me on social at armchair-explorer podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Drop me a line if you like travel and adventure. We're going to get on well. And please remember to hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any of that good travel karma that is almost definitely, maybe positively coming your way if you do. So until next time, be kind to yourself, be compassionate, and enjoy the journey. Because the more we look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive. Armchair Explorer is produced by Armchair Productions. Find our other shows at armchair-productions.com. My name's Aaron Miller. I write, present, and produce the show. Charles Tyree does the audio editing and sound design, and our theme music is by the artist Sweet Chat. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
I'm Max Hortzorn, host of the Go Nomad Travel Podcast. Every week, I bring you a short 5 to 8 minute escape to somewhere unexpected. I cover the kinds of travel stories you don't hear anywhere else, quirky destinations, unusual adventures, and people who make the world endlessly interesting. If you love discovering new places but don't have time for a long show, these bite-sized episodes are perfect for your commute, your walk, or your coffee break. Join me on the Go Nomad Travel Podcast and explore the world in just a couple of minutes.
If you want to travel more, ideally in luxury, but without the luxury price tag, this show is for you. I'm DeAndre Koch, and on Revolutionizing Your Journey, I use my unique vantage point as a financial advisor to break down exactly how my wife and I leverage credit card points and miles to fly business class, stay at 5-star resorts, and take bucket list trips for a fraction of the cost. Each week, I share real strategies packed with actionable tips and interview some of the smartest travelers in the game to help you revolutionize the way you travel. Travel well, live boldly, and find Revolutionizing Your Journey wherever you get your podcasts.